Hey, Terry.
Yes, sir.
It's football time in Oklahoma.
Yes, it is.
Have you ever wanted to say that?
Yes, I do every day.
Well, this season, don't miss out on your chance to partake in one of the greatest college football traditions there is. And that, my friend, is tailgating. Tailgate Connect is your ticket to experiencing college football pre-gaming the right way. Have you ever felt like a lost tourist on a college campus when it comes to game day? Well, your troubles are at an end, because Tailgate Connect allows you to connect with the top-tier tailgates on college campuses across the nation, including right here in Norman, Oklahoma. Find your tailgate family this season and join Tailgate Connect today. All you have to do, Terry, is go to www.tailgateconnect.com to learn more and sign up for an OU tailgate. But if you do, be sure and tell them that OU Sooner Fan Podcast sent you. Put us in your referral box.
Sounds like a plan. Do it, Sooner fans. Hey, Sooner football fans. This is your Sooner Football Fans podcast. Right now, stop what you're doing. Whatever app you're listening to the podcast on, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. On today's episode, it is our season kickoff special. We have Cullen Clark from Big 12 Country, Ryan Lewis from the Football Brainiacs, Blinkin Riley, George Stoia from OU Daily, BennieandBuds.com, Rob Jennings, Erik Gee from Locked On Sooners, Jason Young from the Football Brainiacs, and Tyler Palmateer from the Norman Transcript. This is part one of a two-part podcast. Sooner Football Fans is not affiliated with the University of Oklahoma, but we do have eligibility left. Boomer. Hey, Sooner Football Fans. You got Terry and Rob here. Boomer, Rob.
Boomer, Terry.
Rob.
Yes, Terry.
It's football season.
It is officially game week, too.
Game week, exactly. No more wondering, no more anticipation. It has started.
It is on. Man, it seemed like I got here quick.
Yeah, I know. It was like, seemed like just, it was so long ago, so far off, and now all of a sudden it's like, okay, here we are. What are we going to be doing? So this is our, I don't know,
season kickoff?
Season kickoff podcast. Something like that. We didn't really name it, so there's going to be kind of the name for it.
We'll accept Twitter suggestions.
Yeah, Twitter suggestions. So just so you guys know who we got coming on, this is going to be a good podcast. We reached out to some folks on Twitter and some media and got some good takes on it. We will have from the Norman Transcript, Tyler Palmateer, our good buddy, is going to be on with us. From the Football Brainiacs, Ryan Lewis. We also have Blinkin Riley going to be on with us, also of the Football Brainiacs, something new. Also the sports editor from OU Daily, George Stoia, from BennieandBuds.com, Rob Jennings, and Erik Gee from Locked On Sooners, and also Jason Young from the Football Brainiacs.
It's kind of a murderer's row of a lineup there.
Yeah. So trying something different. Most of these guys are Sooner fans. We also have from Big 12 Country, Cullen Clark.
He'll probably try to remain neutral.
Yeah, the neutral guy.
Right.
But, a pretty good list of people that we're going to ask to talk about the season and what they're expecting. We haven't had a podcast since it was announced that Kyler Murray is the starting quarterback. Are you happy, Rob?
Yeah, I think so. Arguably we're talking about the most explosive player in college football that really has not been able to explode.
Right.
So, yeah, I think I'm ready to see what he can do. I'm ready to see what the offense can do. And, we've been running this into the ground. I'm ready to see the improvement in the defense.
Right.
How about you?
The same. I think I've been saying it all along. I think our offense is fine. I think our offense is going to be more dynamic this year than it was last year. Yeah. And I'm going to say it officially right here and now. The Baker Mayfield era at Oklahoma is over.
Yeah.
I know everybody loves Baker. I love Baker. He was a great quarterback.
Maybe the best player we've ever had.
Right.
Not just quarterback.
Quarterback. Maybe the best, but it's over. It's time. Now it's time to move forward. It's time to look at what we got. And I think
and what we got is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. So, I agree. Kyler's going to be explosive. But we also got Austin Kendall sitting there, who in his own right is obviously a great quarterback, because I think it did go down to the wire as far as the competition wise.
And he could probably start at 90% of the other colleges in the country.
Just so happens he's at the college that has Kyler Murray.
Right.
So,
I mean, good grief. Kyler did not lose a game in high school, and I mean all 4 years.
Right. That's pretty amazing.
He's going to be a special player.
But, on the defensive side, we beat it into the ground, but we're going to continue to beat it into the ground and beat it to death until we see an Oklahoma defense.
Oklahoma defense.
Yeah, somebody that will actually shut you down, and
we'll play with some lights out and abandonment, not in the third quarter where there's holes that you could drive a car through.
Right.
I mean, we don't want to see that anymore.
Right. We got a great schedule, I think, coming out, coming right out of the gates. We got FAU. It's going to be a good test.
It's going to be a better game than they thought it was originally when they scheduled it.
I guarantee it. So,
yep.
And then we've got UCLA. You got the, I don't care. I know they probably had the worst season of the teams that were playing non-conference, but Chip Kelly factor is good for 3 or 4 wins.
Well, and it's UCLA. They're going to have more closely matched to our talent, I think, than any of the rest of the teams.
Right.
The talent-wise, they're gonna have some major D1 players over there.
Right. So, and being coached,
Yeah, and they're coached. Absolutely.
So, then we got Iowa State. The revenge factor, all of that, and we'll get into more on that, throughout the podcast. And then, of course, Army. Coming in here, then Baylor, Texas, off week, and then we're into the Big 12. What do you think? I mean, I haven't even brought this up, hadn't even thought about it really until the other day. The West Virginia game, it's Friday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd. I'm not a big fan of that. Saturday's game day. We don't generally, teams that need the exposure, they play on Thursday and Friday. We don't need that. I guess it's probably just so that the kids can have a regular type Thanksgiving, and then I'm okay with that.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe next year we don't have a game that week or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I just thought it was, maybe there's no, not really any football on that day, so it's a 4-day weekend. They got thrown enough cash to play on a Friday. Because that's what it came down to.
Probably.
Is whether or not the schools are willing to play that day to make a little bit of extra cash. But I don't know, cautiously optimistic, worried.
Because honestly, I mean, I know we're fans and we don't think this way, but that first game, if FAU came in here and somehow pulled off the miracle, which is not totally out of the realm a possibility, then that could really send us into a skid where the UCLA come in here and beat us, and then
it's not out of the realm of possibility.
It is not, because we got to get some things figured out, especially defensively,
really fast.
Right. So I mean, I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think you do either, but. It's if we come out of September, 1-3, man, that's not very good.
Yeah, that's nobody's going to be happy with that. But it's just that we've been so close the last few years. I'm like a lot of fans, and like you are tired of coming in. Second and third, and I know that the football team is too, but still, it's Oklahoma. We're Oklahoma football.
We are Oklahoma football, And it's not okay.
Yeah, it's not okay. I mean, it's been 18 years since our last national championship. What?
Too long.
9 years, 10 years since we played for one. You know, been in the game. We've been beaten in the semifinals, the playoffs.
Soundly. Well, last year wasn't.
Last year wasn't, but yeah, we've been knocked out of it, and Sooners are hungry for a championship.
We gotta be.
And I'm hoping that we see that rise up this year.
And something else, what I don't really want to have to do is I don't want to have to score 89 points to secure a victory.
Right.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't want an 89-82 game.
If we put up 21 points, we ought to feel pretty comfortable.
Right. Yeah. I think this offense is going to just light it up on everybody.
I do too.
But what I want to see is 45-55 to 20, 45, to 14.
How about 64-14?
Yeah. Something
or
like
63-14.
Because this offense is going to put up points. They're going to. They're going to get theirs.
I think so.
I just want to see stoppage on the defensive side of the ball. I want to see them bow up and get some 3 and outs, and not even 3 and outs. I mean, for crying out loud, 8 and 9 and outs. I don't care. A turnover. I mean, we used to lead the league in the NCAA in turnover margins, and we're not getting any turnovers.
Nah.
Hardly at all. Thank the Lord for Caleb Kelly last year and 2 games scooping and scores.
Scoop and score, yeah.
So just that's the consensus I think with all Sooner fans.
Well, you and I are both a little bit old school, and I know that we enjoy the offense that we had last year, where we just passed people silly. But I think that we would love it even more if Anderson came out and ran, if he was a 1,000-yard rusher and Sermon was a 1,000-yard rusher, and we threw it around the yard. Maybe even Kyler's 1,000 yards, right?
Right.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
If we have a couple 1,000-yard rusher, if we have 3,000 rushers, man, we would be unstoppable. We could outscore everybody.
Right. But I don't want to even if we can outscore everybody, I don't want to outscore.
I don't want it to have to be that way.
I want to beat people. I want to see, I want to see us line up with the offense we have, dominate, through the air, on the ground, and then our defense walk out there and punch somebody in the throat.
Yeah, yeah. I want it 38-3 at half because I'm a typical fan. I want it 38-3 at half, and I want to see Austin Ham. Austin Ham. Austin Ham.
Are you hungry, Rob?
I guess I am. I want to see the backup in the second half, or at least the whole fourth quarter.
Yeah.
That way, everybody stays healthy. We stay fresh. Because a long season will wear you down if you're playing.
Yeah.
If your team, your one's got to go all 4 quarters all year long. Come playoff time, they're tired.
I want to see what we've talked about before, and what Paul Migliazzo said on the podcast yesterday about the defense in the 80s. It was offensive that somebody scored on them.
Right.
They expected to shut everybody out, shut them down, let our offense go do their thing, hang a half 100. We're going to shut you out. And it just doesn't seem to have that mentality from the 80s. And let's forget about the 80s. Let's even talk about the early 2000s. That was a mentality in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it was.
Is our defense is going to physically dominate you, and our offense is going to run your defense ragged.
Defined at the coin flip.
Right.
What do you say?
Yep.
You got my boy's trophy. I'm here to get.
Yeah. And Chris Winkie crapped his pants. That was the tone for that game right then, because you could go. I go back and watch that sometimes on YouTube. Look at Chris Winkie's face. He wasn't bowing up to him.
No, he wasn't stupid.
But somebody like with a team with that mentality, and somebody like perhaps Baker would have mouthed off back. Winkie looked like this guy's going to come across the line and tear my head off. I can see it in his eyes. He wants to kill me for winning this thing. So I want to see that mentality. And that was great when we had Paul in here, is you could see his passion for it still.
Oh, yeah.
His body language when he
and the dude looks like he can still play.
Yeah.
I mean, good grief.
Yeah, but you could see it in his body language and in his eyes. He when he looked at us, was like, we weren't going to score. They weren't going to score. We were not going to let you score. And if that happened, they were upset. They were upset with themselves.
And I really loved it when he was talking about that one game where it was 27-0.
Yeah, the Nebraska game.
The Nebraska game, and then they scored 7 on them late in the game, and they were ticked.
Yeah, it was the offense fumbled the ball and let them pick it up and run it in for a touchdown.
I thought, man, now that
you know, and he said Switzer was going through, the defense was all pissed off in the locker room, not talking, and what Switzer was like, we just won the conference, and no, we had Nebraska. We had them shut out. They hadn't been shut out in years.
Yep.
And we had it. And, so
if that's what makes you mad during the game, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I'm okay with it because that means you just went in there and messed them up. And that's really what happened.
Right. And that's what I want to see. I want to start seeing that again. I know it's wishful thinking. Maybe we will. I don't know. But, I just want to see a more dominating defense on the field than what we've had the last couple of years.
Yes, and we all do.
Yeah.
We want to see that defense come in there and just play lights out. And, every now and then give the offense a rest, because you remember last year.
Oh, yeah.
It was offense, defense out there. They score on us. Offense, and we're out there all the time. So.
Right. So, I don't mind if it's offense, defense out there, 3 and out, offense, defense, scores, defense, but the fact that we're scoring in 6 plays, Baylor come back and score in 2, you're like, for crying out loud, come on, guys. Mm-hmm. So, I'm interested to see what our guests are going to have to say about it, what their thoughts are on it. All of them have readers, listeners. That's why we wanted them on. I'm really looking forward to hearing Blinkin Riley effect and what that's all about. And so, I'm interested to see what all these media types and bloggers and stuff, see if their readers and listeners have the same thoughts as we do, and if that's what they're going to do, is put that out there the same way.
Yeah.
So it ought to be interesting. With that being said, guys, we're going to start off with our first guest. Again, this is the first time we've done one like this, but we're really excited for it, and we hope you enjoy it. Let's get our first guest on. All right, Sooner fans, first up on our season kickoff podcast is the sports editor from the Norman Transcript, our buddy, Tyler Palmateer. How's it going, Tyler?
Going good, Terry. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, we're glad to get you on again. You're first up on this show, and so you're going to get the first dibs at, I guess, talking about the announcement, Kyler Murray, the starting quarterback for the University of Oklahoma. Any surprise there at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think everybody thought that was going to be the guy, and he's the guy with the athleticism that very few guys in the country have, and obviously there's the fact that there's the baseball factor in that, where it just didn't seem like Kyler Murray was going to come back and sit on the bench after returning, instead of becoming a Major League Baseball player. But that aside, they let the competition go on for a long time, and I think part of that was to push Kyler Murray. I mean, I think you don't see a guy improve as much if you don't lock him into a competition for a while, and that's why you just don't see tons of starters named in fall camp anyways. I mean, people talk about, well, Kyler was named the starter, and well, there weren't a whole lot of starters really named. I mean, there were a couple guys that you knew were going to start in their spots because maybe by default, or it was so clear cut, they were just assumed starters. But there aren't a whole lot of guys during fall camp that coaches come out and say, okay, we've decided, he's going to start. I mean, they let all these competitions go on. so guys get better.
Right.
And I think that was a big part of the decision lasting as long as it was. But no big surprise for me that Murray was named the starter. He's got skills that very few guys have as far as his entire package with speed and athleticism. And of course, one thing Austin Kendall had was size.
Right.
But yeah, I think Murray was just. I think he's got something that very few guys have, and he was going to be the guy. And at least it just seemed like that from my standpoint, that he was just too rare of a talent to probably not have this job.
You know, and I think it's interesting too is that if we look back at last season, and you know, with Lincoln's type, you know, style of offense and everything, everybody looks at the run and gun, spread them out, but Oklahoma ran the ball a lot last year. A lot. I think it ended up being a little bit more than we threw the ball. And with that, and Kyler, you know, and Anderson, and you know, the whole plethora of running backs we have, it's going to add a huge, huge dimension, I think, to this offense this year.
Yeah, and Riley, I don't want to say he prefers a running quarterback, but he's certainly
recruiting them.
I mean, yeah, he's recruiting them. I mean, Tanner Mordecai can move around. Spencer Rattler and Baker Mayfield could move. Not a guy he necessarily recruited or
Right.
didn't recruit, but of course, when he actually, I take that back. At East Carolina, I think I'm right. I think he made a call to Mayfield when he heard he was going to go to OU, and he tried to get him to go to East Carolina, or at least planted that seed.
Right.
I could be wrong. That's a
I think
memory from a press conference from last year that I had of him talking about that. But yeah, no, his system, he certainly is not opposed to. I think Riley has his mind. He's a creative guy, and when it comes to his offense, so the more options he has, that doesn't necessarily overwhelm him. That he has more options and more layers to add to his offense. I think he thrives off having more options and more layers to his offense, and that's what Murray does with his speed. So that's the big. I think we can talk all we want about. Well, Murray. He has to keep the job, but I think just it's going to be really exciting to see how he fits in and what Riley does with him, especially Saturday. That's just going to be a lot of fun to watch and see what he has Murray doing on how many designed runs are there, how much Murray's going to have, I think, a lot of freedom himself to make those decisions.
Right.
To throw a run, so it's going to be pretty interesting.
No, me and Rob and Caleb were talking the other day, and so wouldn't it be hilarious if he or not hilarious? It would be crazy, and the crowd would erupt if the first time they line up on offense, if they line up in the wishbone, just a set, and then just check out of it, the eruption of the crowd if that would happen.
Yeah. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, or even run one out of it, just because I know they've got some option dimensions, because they actually showed it last year when Kyler played in the Ohio State game, where he zone read to Sermon and then trailed Sermon, and Sermon pitched it back to Kyler, which almost made me jump out of my living room. I was so excited. So not because it's the wishbone, it was just something you haven't ever seen before. So. And I think the Sooner fans have 100% full faith in, the ones we've had on the podcast, the folks that we've talked to out public, their faith is in Lincoln and this offense. And I think that, they know that Lincoln has an offensive mind, that he's creative, the things that he does, and it all falls back onto the defense. Had some defensive injuries. I don't think anything. Well, we've lost, a couple of freshman linemen, but Buki, I know, has been his hamstring that he's been nursing, I think. Isn't that right?
Yeah, his injury, I'm not exactly sure on, but it was, he's back from that, and I think he missed some time, but he returned last week.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he's back to normal. I think a lot of aside from the injuries that they had on the line to start the season, I don't know that they have all those guys back, but I think Mike Stoops didn't sound quite as worried about it last week as he did the week before.
Yeah.
Some of those guys that were out. So I think they've got some guys healthy. Of course, we're going to find out a lot more Friday when they take the field and we see who's out there.
Right. Well, one thing they have been doing, I mean, and the stuff I've read, online and watched, some of your stuff and things, is they have been touting, the front, the front four, front three, and the linebackers as very much more aggressive than previously. At least the stuff I've read and seen is that they're kind of touting it as it's bigger, stronger, faster, more aggressive. Is that the change you think we're going to, for Sooner fans finally get to see as a little bit more aggressive defense this year?
I think the jury is still out. There was, I say this a lot, but fall camp is a place of eternal optimism for every team. Nobody comes into the season. It's just not a place you hear a whole lot of negativity. That you haven't played any games. Players are excited to be back, and coaches, and they're sure not going to tell us that they all got slower and weaker and
True.
less aggressive from the year before. I think it's just a time of excitement for them. And like I said, just that hope and positivity, that's just kind of what those few weeks are about. So I understand the optimism, and they're welcome to have that. I mean, that's their right to, I have no problem with people saying that, they're going to be better, them saying we're going to be better. We are better. And even Mike Stoops, going back to the spring, has called the defensive line their most improved group. But I kind of think it's guarded optimism because you have essentially the same guys back, and you don't have that dynamic pass rusher
with Obo,
like Obo on the edge, and so that position's going to be different. They're going to change the way they allowed Obo to do things they're not going to allow Mark Jackson and Addison Gums to do. So that position will be different. But I think it was Calvin Thibodeau the other day he was talking about Neville Gallimore, and that Gallimore's outlook hasn't changed. He has a lot side, but Thibodeau basically just said it's time we can't just keep saying it. Everybody's got to play, everybody's got to perform, and so I think that's really the key. Everybody can talk about how they're a little bit deeper this year, more experienced, but at the end of the day, they're just going to have to, if they want to be better and more disruptive, they're just going to have to be better and more disruptive. So I would call it guarded optimism at this point, that they can be better, and some of that is, from one year to the next, you would just hope that there's some development and some improvement on their side, on their part, that happens for them. And, with the linebackers, you would, Kenneth Murray, another year under his belt, it's
right.
easy to just presume that he's going to be better. I mean, as a freshman middle linebacker, that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
A lot of the things he had to do. And,
and he took
Kenneth Murray
he took the last year's Rose Bowl, sounds like pretty personal. I mean, they say that he's watched the game over 100 times, seeing where he can improve, started studying other linebackers. And, my opinion is that's what it takes. You take it, you take your performance personally, and you find out what you have to do to improve it. You know what I mean? And that's the type of stuff as a fan, that I like to hear, is that, hey, I know I didn't perform to where I should have, or we didn't, personally I didn't perform, and I'm going to make the steps during the off season to improve it. So looks like a positive on that point.
Yeah. And Kenneth Murray's just a really serious guy. I like everything I hear from him. And again, that's one of those things where everybody can say the right things. It's just a matter of, can they go out and be better? Can they not make mistakes? Can they, lead the middle of that defense like a veteran should? He's still going to be a sophomore. He's still going to be pretty young.
Yeah.
But I like Kenneth Murray's attitude, and from a leadership standpoint, he's just serious business all the time, and that should be a calming presence, I think, for them to have a guy that's a year older now and is way more sure of himself and of the defensive calls and things like that. So you would assume that he's just going to be better.
Right.
But again, that's kind of goes back to just my point that a lot of this optimism is based on the assumption that these guys are just going to make jumps, and so it's still kind of a wait and see.
Yeah,
optimism is guarded.
I call it the Kool-Aid effect. I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, I'm not gonna drink the defensive Kool-Aid until I see it. Optimistic, hopeful, and we've said it before on the podcast. I finally took a big old drink of the Kool-Aid after the Ohio State game last year, and we turn around and play Baylor, and ugh. So, but that's all we can do. Is hope, because we've seen, the last several years the same style, the same defensive problems, and our offense has gradually improved more and more. And the hope is that we just catch up with that offense soon. And I think they're on the right track. I just don't know if it's going to happen this year. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what does a guy like Levi, guys that redshirted last year. I think when you talk about guys that could make jumps, the couple of the freshmen that redshirted, like Justin Broyles, Levi Draper, what do they add to the mix? Guys that had a year to develop and weren't playing, and their bodies got healthy and developed. I think it'll be interesting to see what they can bring. That, because then you're just not relying on true freshmen to come in and just make a big impact for you. There's some guys that had a chance to develop in that last year, so it'll be a really good test too, I think, with Florida Atlantic. They're going to, I think they'll probably throw the ball a little bit better this year. They weren't super prolific, at least yardage wise, last year, but you'd kind of think they might have a little bit of an upgrade in talent at quarterback, possibly, whether it's DeAndre Johnson or Chris Robinson. But then they've got a great running game. Devin Singletary is a really good running back, and they ran up a lot of yards with him last year. Now, but the competition wasn't great, but they played really well down the stretch in Conference USA.
Yeah.
Which, again, not the toughest schedule, but they manhandled a lot of those teams, and so it's a good mid-major type test, and they'd probably take offense. FAU would probably take offense to the mid-major title, like all mid-majors do.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a really good test for them, for OU's defense right off the bat. This isn't going to be last year where you get a little tune-up with UTEP in week one.
Right.
It is a much better team than UTEP. So we're going to know pretty quick how much this defense has improved on Saturday, because
Lane's going to
Florida Atlantic is a very good offense.
He's going to test them,
right.
Bottom line. And, and that's the case, I think, with the entire, non-conference schedule. Is there's no slouch, there's no gimme. All three of these teams are solid football teams. I think the worst one last year was UCLA, but I'm sorry, you got the Chip Kelly factor, and they're going to be improved. Army is solid, so, and we start off with a good, like I said, good mid-major, but it's a solid, good football team, and I think it's going to I think it's going to be a ball game until probably halfway through the third quarter. I just think Oklahoma's going to just finally physically be better. You know what I mean? And just wear them down. At least that's what I'm hoping for. So, but what are your predictions for the season? Does Oklahoma win the Big 12 again? Is Texas back like they keep saying? And do we get back into the playoffs? What are your thoughts on those three?
It's a good question. I haven't forced myself to make any predictions yet, but
hey, it's football season.
I don't think
you got to make those decisions now.
I should have been ready for this. I'm just gonna. I think OU is going to get to the Big 12 championship game, but I don't think they're going to make it to the college football playoff. As far as numbers of losses, that's tough. That's tough for me to pin down, but I can see with the way the Big 12 is this year, I could see maybe the two in the championship game having a few more losses.
Yeah.
Maybe two, as opposed to last year. And that's just because I think maybe the gap has closed a little bit. I don't know if that's tough to say, but I guess when you look at it from this standpoint, Mayfield's presence for OU last year was worth at least the win at Baylor.
Right.
I would say the win. You could probably lump Texas into that. That was a close game.
Right.
I think you could lump, Kansas State, although, Rodney Anderson made the big play at the end, having Mayfield in there. I just think, in Oklahoma State, it was just worth several victories alone because of his production, because of when you just needed a drive, when you just need to go down the field and make a drive to win a game. He was such a good guy to have in there. So without him, I don't know that they'll put up quite as many numbers, and does that may not. That's the defense. Some of those defensive issues were kind of overshadowed,
right?
Like you've said, just with the offense's production. So I think it's reasonable to think there might be more losses, but that I still think they'll get to the Big 12 championship game. They could even win it, but I think I think it's going to be tough for them to get to the college football playoff because they could end up with 2 or 3 losses. They could get to the Big 12 championship possibly, but then, lose, then you've got maybe a third loss and you're probably on the outside looking in.
Yeah. Well, I think with the Big 12, whoever, whether it be Oklahoma or somebody else, just the national thought of Oklahoma, of the Big 12 is you're going to have to be pretty much undefeated or a 1 loss outside of your conference, maybe an early loss inside of your conference to get to it anymore. Mm-hmm. I just think that's the the mentality towards the Big 12. I heard it again on a preseason game, and it still ticks me off, a preseason pro game, and they brought up, I don't remember who was, it wasn't a Cleveland Brown, it was, and they brought up the Big 12, we know they don't play defense in the Big 12, and it's like, so that's the perception. And unless I think whoever it is, whether it be Oklahoma or whoever is going to have to stand out before they're going to let another Big 12 team in. I could be wrong, but it just seems like that's kind of the perception. So, well, hey, Tyler, we appreciate you being on. We're going to move on to our next. We got a whole slate of people coming on, and we sure appreciate you being on with us.
All right, I appreciate it, Terry. Thanks a bunch for having me.
All right, talk to you later.
See ya.
All right, next up on our season premiere, our season kickoff podcast, a guy that everybody knows off of Twitter, and now he's actually being paid for his genius. We've got Blinkin Riley. How's it going, Blinkin? Everybody's favorite.
How's it going, guys?
Good, and now you are now a contributor to TFB, correct?
I am. I'll be doing pregame and postgame throughout the season.
Well, that's cool.
Maybe an extra article here and there. But
well,
yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah,
it's going to be fun.
It's kind of funny how a Twitter account can turn into writing articles all of a sudden.
I know. I was joking with a friend of mine the other day that it's funny, this little Twitter account that I made last year just to follow Sooner stuff has now turned into something that I need, like calendars and productivity tools to manage.
It's got to be a lot of fun, though, right?
Oh yeah, tons of fun.
And it's called The Professor. Isn't that what you're?
Yeah, that's kind of my my nickname on the TFB site.
Yeah, because I was, thanks for letting me know, by the way, because I was on the TFB site because that's where I get a lot of my stuff, our stuff from. And I say The Professor, and then all of a sudden here's this little bio about you, and I was like, man, I thought we were friends. Doesn't even let me know that, hey, go read my. Go read my article on TFB.
Well, it all just happened so fast. We're like, we need some articles, and so
there you go. And I loved it.
Who knew how popular they were going to be anyway? And,
yeah. So. Well, I loved it because it was the Riley effect, correct? And that's what you did it
right.
on?
That's what I've kind of named it. Is this the Riley effect?
Okay. School us. Tell everybody what the Riley effect is.
So basically, the Riley effect is defined as the difference between the total offense a team allows against Blinkin Riley and the average offense that team allows against everybody else. So if you took, a team's defense, say Georgia, all of their games, their average offense that they allow with everybody else during the season, and then what did Blinkin Riley do to them?
So,
and it's usually not pretty.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty for us, but
yeah. So, I mean, do you have one handy again? Maybe a game real quick that you can just kind of give a comparison to.
Sure. We can look at. We can actually look at Georgia.
No. No. We are
okay,
we are officially into the season. We're not talking about losses. So.
Okay. Well, let's take. Let's take last year's Oklahoma State game.
Okay.
Right. So Oklahoma State they gave up, as far as to everybody outside of Oklahoma. Let me just grab it here.
You must have. You must have had
yeah.
Georgia pulled up. Sorry about that, man.
I did have it pulled up. They usually averaged 378 yards a game, right? They gave up around 27 points per game.
Right.
Well, Blinkin Riley put up 400 more yards, and actually scored 35 more points than they typically would allow to everybody else. So the difference there is the actual Riley effect.
That he just doesn't matter what your defense does to everybody else. He just comes in and destroys it.
He does.
Yeah.
and so I looked into it, and there's some things. Okay, well, he has Baker Mayfield.
Right.
Well, that's a big one, right? He's also at Oklahoma, where there are, a ton of super talented guys, and he has all the tools to be successful. So, is it really him that is being successful? You can ask that question.
Right.
But if you go back and look, in his history, he actually, there's a pretty clear pattern that is, to me, it really does look like he accounts for a large portion of what Oklahoma's done for over the past 3 years.
Right.
So,
because you did a comparison too. You don't have to go, but when he was at East Carolina,
he was at East Carolina.
Did the same thing there, didn't he?
He did. I mean, he went to he played North Carolina, put up 33 more points than they typically allowed. He went to Virginia Tech outscored their defense by 10 points and actually won that game. He put up 23 points on South Carolina at South Carolina. He put up 20 points on Florida in the bowl game.
Yeah.
So I mean, even with even with the tools he had at East Carolina, he was still playing major college football teams, and I mean outperforming
their defense,
the average team, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying the old saying does not hold true that players win and coaches lose games?
Well, I mean, I think it's I think Baker Mayfield absolutely won us a bunch of games, but I also think that Lincoln Riley also won us a bunch of games.
Right. And and that's been kind of the discussions that we've already had with other guests on this edition is. You can pretty much throw, the Oklahoma State game, Baylor, Kansas State, those wins, those one more drives that we needed onto Baker's shoulders. Cause very good possibility he not in those games. It's a 3-loss season.
Yeah. I mean, he was definitely a very important part, especially like you said at the end of games when you only have one more drive and you need that drive to be good. That's when the players really shine,
right,
as opposed to the coaches. Coaches are long term. They're the scheme of the whole game, right? That's where they can make their impact,
right?
But one of the big questions is, okay, well, who was the contributing to this prolific offense over the last 3 years? So I think that is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, question going into the season. So as an add-on to that article, I actually went back and I compared all those games and how we outperformed those defenses, compared it to specifically Baker Mayfield's performance in those games.
Right.
And it's pretty stunning if you go look. I mean, some of Baker's worst games from a passer rating perspective were so 2015 against Oklahoma State, we outscored their defense's average by 30 points. Let's see. There's TCU. We put up 150 more yards than they typically allow. I know you don't like to talk about it, but Georgia, we did score 34 more points than they typically allow.
Yeah.
And that was one of Baker's overall worst games as a passer. But like I said, he typically, and what you see in the numbers is when the passing game is down, the rushing game shoots up. He finds a way to do it with one or the other.
Right.
So let me ask you this then, while we're on that Georgia subject. Who, if anyone, do you shoulder with that loss, the coaches or the players?
Oh, boy. I think the biggest thing, and I think it wouldn't even have been close, and I don't know whose fault this is. I don't know if this is the defensive line and linebackers. I don't know if this is Mike Stoops, but if you go look at that game and what those Georgia running backs did, I mean, it's shocking.
Yeah,
it's something that should never have happened. I mean, they were putting up, I think they had maybe 3 running backs with 100 yards. I mean, they were ripping off. I mean, I think they had a couple of running backs with over 7 yards a carry. That's wild.
Yeah. That's crazy wild.
So I mean, if you just hold them to, like, regular getting beat bad numbers,
yeah,
like you stand a much better chance of winning that game.
Yeah. Well, I think the consensus with everybody is, looking at, following Twitter and stuff, is everybody has 100% full faith in Lincoln Riley and his offense. And I'm one of those, because I'm I've said it before. I don't care who they put back there. Yeah, Kyler Murray being named the starter, it's going to be a crazy scheme that we're going to see.
I feel like there's a big but coming here, though.
But I think a lot of the offense is Lincoln's mind. He just knows where to put guys, what he wants to do, and everybody's question mark again this year is on the defensive side of the ball. And instead of outscoring people like we did those games we were discussing, Oklahoma State, Texas, Baylor, Kansas State, and we just outscored them. We didn't beat them. Our defense didn't shut them down. So, we had more points on the board, and they didn't get the ball again at the end of the game. So,
right,
that's what I think everybody, the consensus is with all the all the podcast fan guests that we've had on. They all say the same thing: defense, defense, defense. So,
yeah. I mean, it's really. That's I've always said that it's not having a good offense or having a good defense. It's the difference between the production of both.
Right.
So yes, you can have a mediocre offense if you have a great defense. You can have a mediocre defense if you have a great offense. It's the difference between those productions.
Right.
And our offense probably will come back a tiny bit. I mean, it's hard to maintain that kind of offense, but I think where we'll really miss Baker is we saw it, and by all accounts, even now, if you go to, Browns camp, everybody who comes out of there, the one thing that they see is Baker was an incredibly accurate thrower.
Right.
And I think that's probably something we'll see some this season is we'll see Lincoln's plays open up beautifully and there'll be somebody wide open, but just kind of off target with the pass.
Right.
I think we'll see some of that. And obviously I don't think it's going to be a problem, but I think we got so used to, seeing Demetri Flowers just wide open in the middle of the field and Baker being able to just put it over his shoulder,
right,
every single time. I think that might not happen this season.
But on the other end of the spectrum, we got a guy that's controlling the offense who can flat out fly,
Absolutely. I mean, some of those throws that Baker would make that were, 30 yards downfield, he might not even try for them. He might just turn around and run around the corner and run for 35.
Right.
So
I really think that we're going to see a more dynamic running game than we've seen here in Oklahoma for a while with him behind center, and it looks like that's the direction Oklahoma is going, is a dual threat quarterback.
Yes.
Our quarterback room is full of commitments and quarterbacks who can run right now. So
yes. Yeah, and Murray especially. I mean, he's even kind of built like a running back, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's short, squatty, like low center of gravity. He's not a huge guy. Because you see a lot of the running quarterbacks will be, like Cam Newton or something, right? They're
right.
Like 6'4", 6'5", like big guys, long legs. But I mean, this is essentially just a second or third running back in the backfield.
Okay. All right. So now it's prediction time. Do the Sooners win the Big 12 for a, fourth straight time, and are they back in the playoffs?
I think they do. I think they win the Big 12. I think it's tight. I have, on my predictions, I have actually 3 10-win teams in the Big 12. TCU, West Virginia, and Oklahoma. Oklahoma edges out, actually loses to West Virginia in the regular season, beats them in the championship game. I do think that we make it through, and that's our only loss, and we do go to the playoff again.
All right. Y'all have heard it here. Blinkin's got us going to the playoffs. Hey, Matt, we sure appreciate you taking the time out to be on again.
Absolutely. It's always fun.
And, your stuff is always interesting on Twitter. And now folks can go to TFB, the Football Brainiacs Oklahoma edition, and check out his articles, I guess, pre and post game, right?
Yeah. Check it out. It'll be there all season. So.
All right. Well, hey, Blinkin, we appreciate it, bud.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right,
thanks again.
Man, I love Blinkin.
He's incredible. We should have got some Blinkinisms before we let him go. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's true. There's nothing better than than when he just cuts loose.
Right. Because somebody's going to get smoked when he does.
Yeah, I can't even quote all he was doing the other day. Some guy challenged him, and
yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, he just ripped him apart, and I guess the Oklahoma State fact this week was that, I don't know the date range, but from like 1975 to 1997 or something like that, Oklahoma State had more Heisman Trophy winners than they did Bedlam wins. So
yeah, you gotta love Blinkin stuff, man. It's great.
Yeah, so
and now I'm excited to see his pre and post game stuff on TFB.
Yeah.
So
I'm definitely going to be, like I said, I just I went on there to check stuff, and it said the professor, and I clicked on it, and I was like, dude, it's Blinkin. So
well, he has a cool and unusual perspective,
right,
that I think is interesting to me for sure. And I, judging from his Twitter followers, the stuff they say, it is them too. So
yeah, and it was funny, when we had him here and some other guests, it was funny how people reacted to him when they met him. It was like they
didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, they're like, "Whoa, hey man!" It was so funny, and he was so it didn't make him uncomfortable. He said, "It's just weird that people do that." I'm like, "Dude, you've made yourself famous." So
before I met him, I said, "You don't want to add him on Twitter. You don't want to do that." And then after I met him, you don't want to add him in person because he's a big, strong kid.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get on to our next guest here. All right, Sooner fans. Next up on our Kickoff podcast special from TFB, the Sooner edition, we've got Ryan Lewis on with us. How's it going, Ryan?
Doing well. How are y'all doing?
I'm doing fantastic. We're getting to spend an afternoon talking Sooner football, so life is pretty good right now. The season's here.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah,
having a good time doing it too.
Yeah. So we ask you on. You're part of the Football Brainiacs, which I love. It's one of my go-to spots for Sooner news and notes. But we're just wanting to talk about expectations from the season, what people are looking at. It seems like the fans that we've had on with our podcast, and then the other media types that we've had on, it's all kind of the same thing, different, just a little bit different take on it, but it's the offense and Kyler Murray, and then the defense. What are your thoughts on our offense and with Kyler going to be behind the helm?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a different look for Sooner fans. It's going to be the first time, obviously, in a few years that Baker Mayfield's not behind center. It's just going to be a different atmosphere. I do think Sooner fans should be comforted. I do think that this will be potentially a smoother transition than the last few Heisman winners at OU to the next quarterback. You look back in 2003, Jason White won it, stayed for 2004, and then going into 2005. There was Rhett Bomar, who obviously was a great talent, but there was obviously some turmoil there.
Yeah.
And then looking ahead to the 2009 season, but Sam Bradford was coming off a Heisman-winning season. OU was looking to be pretty good again, and there were some injuries that were hurtful. And while Andrew Jones obviously turned into one of the most proficient passers in OU history, his first year, it was a tough situation to ask of a young guy to come into the game a few different times and then finish out the season following a Heisman winner. So I think that those were kind of tough for Sooner fans, just not the transitions that you would have hoped to see. So I think this one's going to be a lot smoother than OU fans have seen in the last 15, 20 years. I think obviously Kyler Murray's great. I do think that any expectation that he's going to be Baker Mayfield should stop right about now. That's certainly not meant as an insult to Kyler Murray, but we just watched, On the Brainiacs, we've had a few posts this week. Blinkin Riley's done a great job breaking down some numbers, and we've looked at just how efficient Baker Mayfield was, and we're talking about one of the most efficient quarterbacks of all time. And so transitioning from him to Kyler Murray is just going to be different. It's just going to be a different look, and OU fans I don't think should place that kind of expectation on Kyler that he's going to be the exact same as Baker Mayfield, because he just won't. I do think it'll be a different dynamic on the offense, and I think while Kyler Murray is obviously a great passer, his legs are one of the main things that get people excited. And so I think that'll be a different wrinkle that Blinkin Riley could add to the offense. Looking at Baker Mayfield, he's obviously not immobile, but he's certainly not blazing fast like Kyler Murray. So I think that's going to be a wrinkle that he can throw in. One of the plays that got me perhaps the most excited about Kyler Murray was looking back to the 2017 Ohio State game. Baker Mayfield came off the field maybe two or three times, and Kyler Murray went on, and I think a lot of OU fans kind of started chuckling, because after the first time he went out, everyone kind of started wondering if he was actually hurt, or Blinkin Riley was just seeing what Ohio State would do against Kyler Murray. But whether Mayfield was hurt or not, there was a play in there where Kyler Murray took the snap. I can't remember if he handed off or pitched it to Trey Sermon. But within about a second or two, Trey Sermon pitched it right back to him.
Yeah.
And you could tell that it didn't work to perfection. It still got, I think, a first down, if I remember right. Yeah, it didn't work to perfection, but you could see the potential there. There was a lot of potential. I'm sorry?
I just said we loved that play. Me and Terry did. We were like, oh, yeah, look at that.
Yeah, because it
was awesome.
Yeah, it was a zone read. Option is what
okay, it was a zone read. Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly how it's set up, but yeah.
Yeah, he handed it to Sermon, and my favorite part of that play was the fact that Sermon read the corner, and when the corner committed to him is when he pitched it to Kyler. And
yeah, I think so. And if I remember right, I do think he pitched it maybe a second earlier than you would have hoped. But it still obviously got a first down, and so you won the game. So
7 yards, and he went out of bounds.
Yeah, but that's what I'm excited to see with this offense is Lincoln's creativity.
What kind of interesting wrinkle can he put in there when he's got an explosive player like Kyler?
Yeah, and we've talked before. I mean, you needn't look very far to find an example of Blinkin Riley out there playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers. I mean, it's not very hard to find. You look at that CeeDee Lamb pass to Baker Mayfield, and he's just on a different level.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I mean, you watch that play, and it was unbelievably easy against a very, very good Georgia defense. I certainly don't want to take anything away from them. Very good defense, but he's just on another level. And so it'll be fun to see what kind of wrinkles he can throw in there for Kyler Murray to kind of test some defenses.
And I think, that's, I think it's pretty obvious that that's the direction of the style of quarterbacks and play that we're going to see with the quarterback room filling up with the dual threats.
I think you're right.
Mordecai and Rattler, and the other, I don't even know the one after Rattler. Rattler is, I don't know his name, but
starts with a U.
Yeah. So, but it's obvious that that's the type of offense, and it just, as a fan that Rob and I do, fans that do a podcast and talk to other fans, that's the comforting thing, is that everybody is that confident in what Lincoln does, and
yeah, I agree.
And
I do think it's.
Go ahead,
please.
Well, I was just going to say it's a sigh. I think a lot of Sooner fans had a sigh of relief when it was Kyler was named quarterback. Not to take anything away from Austin Kendall, but everybody wanted that. That was the fans' choice, and so and to see what Lincoln does with that, I think is what everybody is looking forward to.
I think so, and I think it's interesting because we think about mobile quarterbacks at OU, and while OU has had fairly mobile quarterbacks over the last 20 or so years, to find what I would call a true dual threat quarterback at OU, you got to go back a ways. I mean, it's not recent. I mean, we think about guys that have been mobile, but I wouldn't consider a dual threat. Guys like Paul Thompson, Baker Mayfield, and Josh Heupel. While they were certainly mobile and could easily move the ball, they weren't blazing fast.
No.
You think about a guy like Jason White, who could have been that, and then 2 knee surgeries later. Obviously, that just wasn't an option.
Right. Slows you down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it just wasn't. And then you guys got guys like, Sam Bradford, Landry Jones, who were your true pro passer kind of guys. So you got to go back a ways to get that true dual threat kind of quarterback. And I don't think, I don't think Lincoln Riley's going to zone in and do something like Lamar Jackson, where he just has Kyler Murray. Either Kyler Murray's running the ball or he's throwing the ball. I don't think it'll be that.
Oh, no.
But I do think that there'll be some. I mean, I'd be shocked if Murray didn't end the season with several hundred rushing yards.
Yeah, and with the the core of running backs that we have, it's just going to be nuts. With what Beatenbaugh has done with the offensive line, they're going to be as good, if not better, than last year, I think.
Absolutely. I was just discussing that with someone the other day. I don't see how you can possibly say they're going to take a step back. I understand they lost a first rounder. That's a bold statement to say, but we're talking about a team that's got 3 different guys that'll probably be drafted this year. I don't understand how you can possibly say they won't be just as good as last year.
Right. Now let's jump to the other side of the ball, and where all Sooner fans are uncomfortable.
Where we would all just like to say we would like Lincoln Riley to be running the defense.
So, what are your thoughts about where the defense is at? Is, a lot of stuff coming out of camp is that the defensive line is stronger, more aggressive. The linebackers, are bigger, stronger, all things that you expect, obviously, that's what they're going to say, but what do you think is going to come out of the defensive side?
I think it'll be interesting. I know that one of the downsides is there's already been quite the injury bug on that side of the ball. And maybe not all guys that were going to necessarily contribute this year, but I think most of them were. I mean, I kind of lost track, so please fill me in if I forgot one. But Starlin Baldwin, Prentice McKinney, Jalen Redmond, Chance Sylvie, and I know I'm forgetting one
Michael
more.
Thompson.
I cannot think of
Thompson.
Thank you, Michael Thompson.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a few of those are in that 2018 class. So that 2018 class got hit pretty hard.
Right.
But I think, Chance Sylvie, I think was probably going to be a starter. I think Baldwin was going to contribute. I think Redmond was, I don't know if he's going to be a starter, but he's going to be close. You got guys in there that were going to definitely contribute pretty heavily. So I think that's just kind of a unfortunate thing. And I think OU's been fairly lucky, all things considered, last few years. But I think that's a downside to start. I do think that secondary is going to be as talented as it has been. Again, the injuries back there do leave me a little bit concerned, just because going into the summer, I thought the depth was really good, and now it's a little bit less, obviously. But I think that between Trey Brown, Trey Norwood, and Parnell Motley, OU has 3 of the most well-rounded corners they've had in a long time, and I just think that it's going to be a great position group. And you've got guys like Jordan Parker who can jump back over to corner if needed. So I think that position group's going to look great. You got true freshman Miguel Edwards, who I think could potentially be assistants there as well. So I think that position group's going to look great. I think one of the things that has kind of almost surprised me a little bit is that the Brainiacs has heard that Trey Brown is going to potentially get just as many reps as the other 2, despite the fact that it looks like Norwood and Motley will be starting. And I don't think that's usually the way that the Sooners defense has ran itself, but I do think that with this year, you've got 3 guys that you trust pretty equally. I think it's a great opportunity to keep some guys fresh.
Yeah.
I think looking at the safeties, it's kind of still a little bit of a unknown back there. I think that it looked for a while there like you might have Chance Sylvie at one of the safety spots, Phil Halton, and then Bookie at the nickel, and now kind of the last few weeks we're transitioning out of that. Obviously, Sylvie got hurt maybe a month ago, and recently it's looking like maybe Bookie will not be at the nickel spot and maybe be at the strong safety spot. So there's kind of still in limbo a little bit back there, but you've got some great guys competing. You got Justin Broyles, who I think is going to have a real good year. You got Robert Barnes, you got Khalil Halton, and then some of the freshmen have been really impressing. It sounds like Henry Yells had a great summer, great off season. So I think that there's just some athletes back there, and I think that's been a really big focus, both on the offense, but particularly on the defensive side the last few years. We saw how well, you mentioned Coach Beatenbaugh, how well it worked on the offensive line. His whole strategy revolves around get a versatile guy that's athletic, that can play a lot of positions, and it's a big old boy.
You're right.
And it works pretty well.
Yeah.
And so I think on defense, you're starting to see this idea of, let's get some athletes back there and let's see what happens. I mean, you got guys that, the guys we just talked about in the last 2 minutes, a few of them have played a few different positions just this off season. So I do think that they're transitioning into getting the best players on the field at the time. And I think it's also a nice transition in that there was a time a few years ago where OU fans were a little bit disappointed because at times it seemed that one person got hurt and we had to pull someone, the OU staff had to pull someone from a different position just to fill that spot. And there wasn't very much depth.
Yeah.
No, and I think that it was, instead of, hey, this guy can play this spot and we think he could help us here, it was, okay, we have to have someone fill this spot. Who can we possibly pull in?
Right.
And I don't think we're really seeing that with these position switches. I think we're truly seeing, let's get the best players on the field possible and have the best depth we can, and develop those guys into people that can play both positions, so that, God forbid, we do have more injuries, we have that kind of option.
Right. And, and it's kind of the opposite of what we've had the last several years. The question mark the last several years has always been the secondary.
I think it has been at times. I do agree.
And the D-line.
Yeah, and now it's kind of switched to where everybody feels comfortable with the secondary, and now we're looking at, okay, now what's the D-line and linebackers going to do?
Yeah, and like I said, I think there's talent all over that defense. I do think that Sooner fans are in a little bit of a wait and see with the secondary. I do think it's as talented as it's been in a really long time, but I do think in the last 2 years have been statistically pretty rough in the secondary. And so I know that they're looking to turn that around, and Sooner fans are looking to see if that could take a different direction this year. So I think they're hopeful, but I do think that the fans are a little bit cautiously optimistic right now.
Always hopeful. Always hopeful.
Always hopeful.
Always hopeful.
Yeah. Right. Cautiously optimistic is a good word
if
for it.
If not a little delusional.
Yeah.
Sure.
But okay, well.
Yeah.
Let's. What are you predicting for the season? Let's get your prediction. Do the Sooners four-peat as Big 12 champions? Do they get left out of the playoffs because of we don't play defense in the Big 12 aura that's over everybody? What are your expectations or your predictions?
Yeah, I think I'm not a gambling man, but if you ask me what the money line should be for OU to win the Big 12 championship versus the field, I know there's a lot of good teams in the Big 12, but I'd be hard-pressed not to say it should be about 50-50, just because OU's just done so well in putting themselves in successful positions over the last 20 years. I do think OU ends up four-peating. I do think there's probably a slip-up somewhere in the season. I don't think it'll be non-conference, despite the fact that I think FAU, UCLA, and Army are good teams.
Yeah,
I think they'll be okay with those, but I do think that at some point in the season there'll be a slip-up, whether it's losing to Dallas or whether it's losing to West Virginia. I think those are going to be some tough games. I think going to Iowa State this year, I think is going to be a little bit tricky. I know OU players will be ready to get some payback, but I do think that Iowa State's going to be pretty good this year. I think they'll surprise some people.
Yeah.
With all that said, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's going to be a better game than what like Rob thinks we're going to go up there, or has said we're going to go up there and just. I know it's fan talk, but just beat the thunder out of them because it's payback, which it might happen. I don't know, but Iowa State I think shocked everybody last year.
Yeah, and some of the Brainiac guys and I were kind of discussing our Big 12 predictions, and we'll get those out I think sometime this week. But I have Iowa State in the top four in the Big 12. I mean, record-wise at the end of the season, I think they're going to be that good.
Yeah.
But all that to say, yes, I think that there will be a slip-up perhaps somewhere in the season. But I do think that OU will get to the Big 12 championship at 8-1. And I think they're going to end up playing West Virginia again.
Yeah.
I think I still have a few question marks on the West Virginia defense, but I think they're going to be good. I really do. I don't mean that as any disrespect. I just think they're still figuring some things out as far as transitioning some new players. But I think if they come out as hot as everyone thinks they do, and I think that offense is going to be fantastic, I think they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
So I look for them to be some stiff competition. Moving on to the playoffs, I don't see how you leave out what is that, 12-1 at that point?
Yeah.
OU team out of the playoff. And I'm not saying I'm necessarily right, but I'd be surprised if they weren't in that conversation. I don't see. I think Bama and Clemson are going to be there pretty much regardless. But I don't see any other of the conference champions getting through unscathed. So I think a 12-1 OU or potentially even a 13-0 OU would make a pretty strong statement to get into that playoff conversation.
Yeah. Well, hey, Ryan, we certainly appreciate it. And again, the Football Brainiacs, if you guys haven't checked out, I'm sure most people have, but if you haven't, you got to. It's one, like I said, it's one of our go-to spots for daily, news and notes. It's helpful, to me who, this is our hobby, but, our podcast is our hobby. I have a full-time job, so I can pull it up on my mobile or on my desktop at work and see what happened today that I might have missed, but we sure appreciate, the website and you coming on with us, Ryan.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you guys having me on. And look forward to getting to hear some talks throughout the next few weeks and throughout the season, and kind of see what the Sooners can do this year.
Well, we're in game week, so it's just going to get better from here, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, we appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks again.
Absolutely.
All right, again, I love the Football Brainiac stuff, and Ryan had some good points.
Some really great points.
Especially on the secondary. You and I haven't really talked about the secondary because we've been so worried about the defensive line. But the last several years, the secondary's been the question mark.
It has been. Absolutely. We've been burnt back there.
Yeah, when we played Ohio State 2 years ago. That was the whole thing coming into it. We're so young. And then last year as well. So it seems like that has turned to where everybody's more comfortable with what we got, in the defensive backfield.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we've got from our favorite bloggers. I love reading their stuff from BennieandBuds.com. We got Rob Jennings on. How you doing, Rob?
Doing pretty well. Boomer, guys.
Boomer, thanks a lot for the boomer. We haven't been doing that today, but hey, I forgot, because we've been dealing with some of the media guys that, they don't, they're showing favoritism. They can't boomer.
Understandable, but
hey,
we're not that official.
Yeah,
we're just fans. We can boomer all we want to.
So we've had you and John on, and we've had John on, and now we have you. John's off vacation, and is that the deal? Where does he get time off?
Yeah, he had to get one more vacation in before the season actually started.
Wait, one more he has more than one.
We're doing something wrong here, Terry.
I don't know how they go places all the time, but they left me here. So.
No. Well, hey, we really appreciate you taking out the time to be on with us. It's our, we're having a blast, a Sunday afternoon. There's still no football officially on, but we're getting to spend the afternoon talking Sooner football. So we can't, we can't complain too much. But well, let's just start off. What are you seeing as the highlights, lowlights? What are your expectations of the upcoming season?
Well, so I've been breaking down each position individually on BennieandBuds.com, and that series will be finishing up this week as we go position by position, strengths, weaknesses, where we kind of see it. But as a general overview, for the offense, I anticipate still probably a top 10 unit in the country. I don't think they'll be quite as explosive as they were last year without Baker Mayfield. I think it's hard to understand what not having that big play threat and just pure efficiency that he had will do. Right. Along with, I think an understated thing with that is how little he turned the ball over. OU hardly ever turned the ball over last year, and when guys did, like Abdul Adams, they were out of the game. You didn't see him again for a while.
You won't see him this year either. So
no, you got to watch Syracuse for that. But I think that's going to be hard to replicate. Is just how steady that was. But until proven otherwise, I'm going to assume a Blinkin Riley offense behind what's still going to be just a dominating offensive line is going to be pretty strong.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I love. What you just said there, the dominating offensive line, because I'm an old dirt eater, I only played high school ball, but I love the fact that we're, this line, as we're coming into games, and it was this way last year, it was whether or not any defensive front that we come up against, we're going to be able to handle our offensive line. And that was the big speak at Ohio State last year. Big boys against big boys, and it's obviously our big boys just put a whooping on their big boys.
Certainly did.
So
yeah.
But
well, and what's even crazier about that is we lost Orlando Brown, a consensus first-team All-American. So you just have this hole sitting at left tackle, and no one even seems that worried about it.
Yeah.
We're shifting a guard out there, and it's just kind of like, he'll probably find it. We got 3 other guys who will figure it out in time.
Right.
Just having that kind of depth available is not something we've seen at OU, particularly on the offensive line, in a while.
Yeah. And, we've had Jason Young, and he's going to be on later from the Football Brainiacs on it. He does a deal for the Brainiacs called Trench Warfare. And one of the things that I've done, I don't want to call it research, but I read around after we've talked to him a couple of times. Biedenfeld, it's just not the best player in the position. He puts the best unit out there, and he may shift them around, like you said, from guard to tackle. It's the guys that mesh better together, that do things better as a unit than it is maybe having one really good guy out there. If he doesn't mesh with the rest of them, he may not get any playing time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and part of that goes back to how he recruits the position. He recruits all these guys who are big but still agile enough they can play guard and tackle. You've got Drew Samia, who's played right tackle previously in his career, which is not common for guys to be able to do both those things. And then also you have guys move around the interior of the line like Jonathan Alvarez.
Right. And, the Alvarez and Humphreys battle, it's coming down to, that apparently, Humphreys is just a freaking bulldozer in there, but he's still not as familiar with everything going on. So that's probably going to be what keeps him out of a lot of snaps. I think he's going to see some, but I think that's going to keep him out of a lot of just experience is what's holding him back.
Yeah, that's a weird one to me too, because coming out of fall camp last year, there was some buzz about Creed Humphrey potentially competing for a spot as a true freshman.
Right.
And it's a little strange that, he's still in a competition with Jonathan Alvarez, who was fine when he played back in 2015 a little bit, but he was no, all Big 12 even type of guy. So it's a little disconcerting that he hasn't been able to make up that gap. But maybe Alvarez has improved a whole lot. There's been a little bit of buzz about that recently.
Right. Well, like I said, I know that, I was reading where, Beanball talked about, he's physically, there's times that he's just overwhelming to anybody they put in front of him. But then at other times, he's never not overwhelming. I think it's just still the experience and doing what and maybe fitting into a unit. If, like I said, that seems to be Beadenball's, forte is I'm going to put not necessarily the best, 4 or 5 guys out there. I'm going to put the best guys that mesh together and do what they're supposed to and work together. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know.
Well, the good thing is there's depth there.
Yeah.
That we're not used to seeing.
And, that's a good point, the depth on this team. It's pretty ridiculous coming into this year, as opposed to what we've been used to.
Everywhere, yeah.
Yeah. Because, for several years we've been like, one guy out, we're pulling, somebody out of the stands, or, if an offensive lineman goes out, we're moving a defensive lineman over. It just seemed like that was what we were doing. And now you're talking about a whole, there's guys waiting in line for their opportunity if it ever arises.
Yeah, and I don't think that any more evident than at inside linebacker, where last year we had to start true freshman Kenneth Murray, and his backup at times when John Michael Terry was injured was a walk-on Brian Mead.
Right.
Who, if you have a walk-on and you're too deep, there's probably a reason they're still a walk-on, and that's not great. But right now, you've got Kenneth Murray there, and then you've got Deshaun White backing him up, and Brian Asamoah, who have all been making some noise out of camp, saying they're almost ready to play. And if Kenneth Murray wasn't, in his second year playing at a pretty high level, then they'd have potential to be playing as true freshmen. Right. And you just move over to the other inside linebacker spot. You've got Caleb Kelly and Curtis Bolton, who both started last year competing for the same spot.
Yeah. And from everything that they're saying that, coming out of camp and everything and in camp, as Murray, Murray's turned into a beast, a serious beast. I mean, you know, he's
him and Gabe Kelly both.
Yeah, you know that it's the mindset. You know, his mindset is it looks like he's emerging as the leader, not simply because he is a leader, but people see his work ethic, his demeanor, and they follow it.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw pieces of that last year. I mean, him getting after guys as a true freshman was a little bit different, but also just he always seemed, I don't want to say like physically ready because anyone coming out of high school isn't going to be there, but he's more advanced than most, and he seemed to be getting in on the action a lot. But it seemed to be sometimes he would just miss reads or be in the wrong place. And if he has more time to watch film, and it sounds like he's, you know, some sort of tireless worker with all those like Rose Bowl watching, the famous stat everyone keeps talking about.
Right.
But if he keeps doing that, then this guy seems to be just an absolute stud on defense for the years to come.
Yeah. So, what were your thoughts? Was it a surprise to you that who the starting quarterback that they named Kyler? Do you think it was a real competition, or do you think it was, I think, that's a bad way to put it. It was always a real competition, but was it just semantics, just a matter of time?
It sounds like I have pretty similar thoughts to you. I think it was a real competition in that there is a way Austin Kendall could have won the job, but I think he would have had to really outplay Kyler Murray to win it. It would be pretty tough for him to come back after getting drafted in baseball to not start.
Right.
If he's choosing Austin Kendall, are we sure he's sticking around? It seems like the things that he adds, running the ball and that potential, just are things Austin Kendall's going to have a real hard time matching.
But
I thought he was going to be Kyler, but
yeah, it did. Surprised me. I've said it before on the at the spring game. The first play that Austin Kendall ran was a zone read and ran it for about 12 yards. So that shocked me.
I had the same reaction. I was screaming at my friends like, I thought this guy was the unathletic one.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I mean, I know it was a real competition. And it's a good thing to have as a Sooner fan when you got two guys that you sit here and go, either one of them could. But I think most Sooner fans were just praying or just thought, period, that is going to be Kyler because that's what Oklahoma fans want. They want that dynamic, Jamel Holloway, J.C. Watts, style of quarterback. Still, even the younger generation does. And they never watched, Jamel Holloway play live, but I think that's what everybody wants to see,
Yeah, and he's just kind of a highlight reel type of player. I mean, he's got the explosive speed to get around anywhere and throws the deep ball. Are kind of his two biggest strengths, which are pretty exciting to watch.
Yeah. So,
but I think it gives me a warm and fuzzy to know that, if God forbid, if Kyler did go down, that Austin Kendall is more than capable of stepping in and leading us straight back to the playoffs.
That's a great point.
And that's always a risk with a running quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the things that we really haven't, talked about or thought about, or at least I hadn't, that, hey, if something does happen, or, let's say, God forbid that, he doesn't, perform very well, and, Lincoln goes, hey, we need to, step up and find, we need to give the other guy an option. I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't think that, it's something that it's comforting to know that that is available. So, but anyway, defensive wise, what do who's going to be the standout on defense?
Are you asking me? Okay,
it feels like every defensive conversation has to start with Buki.
Yeah, I'm asking Rob there. But yeah, it comes down to Buki.
It seems like every conversation is starting with Buki.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to think about him because he is a smaller guy that I'm not sure how well that's going to adjust to the, playing against bigger athletes, but he played at IMG Academy in high school, which is against the best of the best every week.
Yeah.
And he held his own. I watched him briefly in the Army All-American game, and the guy was just making plays all over the place. And Trevor Lawrence, who's the number one player in the country, the quarterback for Clemson, is currently in a competition for their starting spot. just started throwing away from Bookie. They wouldn't go near him, which tells something.
That's good news.
Yeah.
That means that somebody else is going to step up and be better.
But, that's, and the other thing about, Bookie is that he doesn't look like he just graduated high school. The guy looks 35 years old. I mean, if you line up across from him, like I said, he looks like he's been in the NFL for 5 years or 10 years. He's just a rough-looking kid, but good-looking kid, but, rough-looking.
Yeah, and the good thing about him is that he's, defensive back, which he was recruited as a corner, but it sounds like he's going to be playing more nickel and safety, which is a real question mark for this defense this year following the departures of Stephen Parker and Will Johnson. And it sounds like the competition's going fairly well with all the corners they've moved into that spot with Buki, Justin Broyles, and Jordan Parker.
Yeah.
But it's a little weird that you have these guys who haven't been playing their safety your whole life, and how are they going to adapt to that? I'm not quite sure. I mean, maybe it's better to have these real great coverage guys in a Big 12 league where everyone's passing the ball around.
Yeah.
But does that leave them susceptible to teams like K-State or Texas or TCU who are going to run the ball more? I don't know. That's a tricky spot to try to figure out what's going to happen.
Okay, now that's the $1 million question. Okay, do the Sooners win their fourth Big 12 title in 4 years, and is that enough to put them back in the playoffs?
I think not only will they win the Big 12, they will also make the playoffs. But I'm not sure that this team will be as good on a pure talent level as last year's team, but their schedule is just remarkably manageable to make that sort of run. They've got basically everyone at home this year except for TCU.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult games, and it really sets up nicely for a team that doesn't even have to be elite to get to a playoff first. I'm not sure what they're going to do once they get to the playoff. I'm a little worried there, but I do think that they're probably the third most likely team in the country to make the playoff behind Alabama and Clemson.
Well, I'll tell you what should happen there is that they should get to the playoffs, okay, and then they should at least win a playoff game. We're over right now in playoffs.
Yeah.
And, it's time to,
it's time to win too.
Yeah, it's time to take that step up. I haven't brought any of this up, but, we had a former Sooner on with us, this past weekend that's was on the podcast. And one of the things that he said about the 1985 national championship team, it was Paul Miliazzo was in here talking with us. And he said it was that Washington game that they, with the schooner debacle back then, that it was right then that they realized, or that they came to the decision as a team and as a defensive unit, was it's not acceptable to just win a Big 8 title. Our job is to win titles. That's what we came here for. That's the mentality I'm waiting on to come out of this team. Right. out of a Blinkin Riley team, because Bob had that mentality and we got close several years. But, I just haven't seen that. Baker had it, a little, had it a lot. But, I mean, as far as a team oriented of this is, we don't belong as a 4 in a row Big 12 champions. We belong as a, national championship, and it's got to be a mindset of these guys to finally reach that point.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough for this team to win it all, but it's one of those things that if you just get to the playoffs, you've got a pretty good shot right there. If things go your way, and I mean, I think we saw that last year where OU, I think, probably was the best team playing right around the time of the playoff, and a few things went wrong in the third quarter, and that was that. But you can break the other direction just as easily, and sometimes it's not always the best team to win. So
yeah. Well, hey, Rob, we certainly appreciate you taking the time out to come on with us. Hope your brother John is having a glorious time and on vacation, or his third or fourth vacation this year. Is that what you said?
Yeah. At least,
if that's the case, I hope he's in Hawaii because they're getting some torrential rain.
Yeah. But again, thanks a lot for coming on for our preseason podcast, and we look forward to talking to you guys again.
Yeah. Anytime. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye.
Rob, I don't know what John does, but apparently Mr. Jennings has a good job where he's able to travel the world.
Yeah,
at least
I need to figure out what that is so that
Yeah.
I can get in on that train.
Now, if he needs an assistant or something like that, or a bag carrier or something.
You know, Rob said that the TCU game was really the only one that I think he said he was worried about that's away. But we got West Virginia and Texas too.
Yeah.
I mean, even though that may be a home game for us, it's still in Texas.
Yeah.
So those 3 games, pivotal, I think, for our season are all away from here, which, we tend to play good here. But, I mean, that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Like, we let Ohio State upset us here, but then we went and upset them at their place.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, my feelings on West Virginia. Until West Virginia proves to me that they're not going to lose 3 games before they're, halfway through the season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know they haven't done that, but you know what I mean? They haven't ever produced. This is 5 years, I know, in a row that they've been. This is, West Virginia is going to contend,
Right.
and by halfway through the season, they've got 2 or 3 losses.
But even still, they're not the easiest team to beat.
No, especially up there.
West Virginia.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, but I just, until West Virginia is there, I'm not going to buy into that. TCU, I think it's going to come down to us and TCU. I think we're going to play TCU twice again this year.
I think you're right.
And
although everybody else thinks it's the second coming there for Will Greer. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. So, I don't know what to expect out of the competition, the Big 12. I said TCU has proven to me to be there year in and year out a contender for the Big 12 title.
Mm-hmm. Just for the simple fact that they can play defense.
Right. Duh.
I mean,
there you go. And, Texas, I don't know. I mean, I know, down in Dallas, everything's different, but it just seems to be a weird situation down there. The Tom Herman deal. It just, I could be wrong, but it seems like it's kind of like becoming it doesn't fit type situation
well, let's
down
face
there.
it. They have not been good since the introduction of the Longhorn Network.
Yep.
They just can't get focused. They can't get right, whatever
Right.
it is. But ever since they've all had cameras in their face, they have not been any good.
Right. So, like I said, it's, anything can happen down in Texas. I mean, down in Dallas. That's a given.
That is a given.
But I just think the horns on the Longhorn are bent a little bit. They don't have a direction yet. It doesn't seem like so.
Well, they've got talent though, so if they can get it all lined up correctly, they'll still be tough to beat. I think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So, all right. Well, let's move on to our next guest. Hey, Sooner fans, that's the end of part 1 of our season kickoff podcast with all these guys. Right now, stop, go right back into your app, and listen to part 2. Thanks for listening to the Sooner Football Fans Podcast. Hit the subscribe button right now on whatever app you're listening to download every episode as they come out. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook and on YouTube. Boomer Sooner.